What is a really bad scene in an otherwise good movie? In Return of the Jedi the special edition, that weird song scene, Jedi rocks, in Jabba's palace. Not sure what George was thinking with that. The less technology that man has at his disposal the better. George Lucas was a genius when he didn't let his imagination run wild. Dina Rowe's foot stomp in The Irishman. I was actually really impressed with how Dina Rowe battled gravity in that scene. My problem wasn't the stomping/kicking itself, it was the weird, crippled, hooked way he was holding his right hand the entire time. The girl power scene in Endgame. Captain Marvel just took blasts from Thanos' ship, flew through said ship, and did this all without breaking a sweat. But she needs help flying through some generic bad guys and all the other female Avengers show up. Some of whom were doing other things on the opposite side of the battlefield. Some of whom have no powers at all. Drax should have been standing there with them yelling about how we are all empowered women. Not going to lie, I'd find that hilarious. When Frodo wakes up in Rivendell, after destroying the ring in Return of the King, and they all come in one by one in slow motion, and give each other cheesy looks. In the movies, Frodo and Legolas don't speak a single word to each other beyond "on my bow." In the end, when everyone is coming into the room, Frodo is saying their names as they come in, except Legolas, who he just kinda gives this haha, "Oh you, elf bow guy." I like to think Frodo just never actually knew his name. It's like when you start a new job and are introduced to a bunch of people your first day and forget somebody's name and you wait too long to ask them what it is again and just never learn it. Talia al Ghul's death in Dark Knight Rises. I'd say Bane's death as well. All that build up, just to be taken out by an off-screen Catwoman. Granted, Batman himself doesn't kill, so it couldn't have been him, but it was far too abrupt. The sex scene with Night Owl banging Silk Spectre second in his airship, ending with the airship ejaculating fire at the same time he does. All while Hallelujah by Leonard Cohen plays in the background. Watchmen. That's actually straight out of the original comic. Without the ham-fisted inclusion of a popular song of course, which is apparently Zack Snyder's only method of injecting genuine emotion into his films. Oh, I remember. About 2 pages doesn't smoothly translate to a 5-minute sex scene, in my opinion. The scene with cats, in the movie Cats. No one saw that movie. /r/saw Cats. Wrong. The scene in American Sniper with the baby doll instead of a real baby. I would have watched that. When they fail to take Thanos' gauntlet, because Star-Lord starts crying like a little bitch and ruins everything. True, but while it did suck it made a lot of sense why Star-Lord was the one that did it. He is probably the most emotionally stunted person in the Marvel universe. Also this is, after he lost both his mom, his dad, and his daddy, he is probably the most fragile at this point in his life. Beyond that, the last time he saw Gamora, he tried to kill her because of Thanos. What he did was irredeemably stupid, but not completely out of character. Not to mention, he lost his powers when he was forced to kill his dad. And it's heavily implied that, before the events of Infinity War, Xandar is destroyed by Thanos, after all that Star-Lord and the Guardians did to save it. Anne Hathaway talking about love being the fourth dimension or some crap like that in Interstellar. She was trying to make sense of her feelings and came off overly emotional, which is why Cooper basically said "you're crazy" right after she said that. It just so happens that her feelings did have some significance with what happened in the end. Yeah, people got all upset about that scene in a way that made me realize anyone new, us viewers, watching a film needs to have all the answers and can perform and think flawlessly like a guy looking for revenge needs to be a martial arts knowing super soldier type of mentality. It was nice for character to just be human and feel emotion without cold logic. I think because movies are, of course, scripted, we expect some version of perfection from the characters, so that scene upset that narrative and expectation. It was more reasonable to me that Cooper needing the theory of a wormhole laid out for him was upsetting to audiences. I get it was for the viewer's benefit, but I understand that outrage more. The ending of Grease, when Sandy and Annie fly away in the car. Like really? Also the end of the first Twilight when Bella's in the hospital and Edward suggests she move to Florida. Her reaction was ridiculously lame. Actually all of Bella's reactions were. Every scene with Cameron Diaz in Gangs of New York. I feel bad for her. You have Daniel Day-Lewis who always starts crank to 11 and only revs up from there. Leo desperately trying to keep up with him. Broadbent and Gleason being their usual amazing selves and then, her. Well, the truth is that she really isn't that good of a serious dramatic actor. The scene where Anakin and Padme argue about who's so in love with the other one. Revenge of the Sith is otherwise a very good film. It's also pretty awkward to contemplate when you're watching him force choke her 40 or so minutes later. Autoerotic force asphyxiation. It's not an otherwise good movie, but little kid Anakin in the control ship was an insanely stupid scene. Now this is pod racing. No, it's not, you little crap. It's literally sitting in an autopiloted starfighter and randomly pushing buttons. I'll try spinning. That's a good trick. In general, sex scenes. I don't mind a quick scene that clearly insinuates leading into sex, but those long, drawn out sex scenes are always awkward and hard to watch. Seriously, have them start to make out and fade to black. I don't need 5 full minutes of people's legs and backs as they rub together. And I especially don't need to see and hear their climax. Not sure if this qualifies as a good movie, but the remake/reboot of Halloween with Jamie Lee Curtis has this god-awful scene where she talks to the sheriff of the town. She yells out how she's been praying for Michael to escape so she could finally kill him. Which is the exact opposite, you know, of the 40 or so freaking minutes at the start of the film, which sees her frightened to death at the mention of his name and turning into a sobbing mess every few minutes whenever she thinks about him. And then the sheriff's response, well, that's a stupid thing to pray for. It all felt ridiculous. I mean, the film in general struck me as a bit silly, but that scene was over the top. Honestly, what killed it for me was her choice of firearms. I get that Jamie Lee Curtis was adamant about having only weapons only the founders would have wanted us to have, as arbitrary as that is, considering that all the weapons weren't in use until around 100 years after the Constitution was written. But that does not excuse her clearing her house with a lever action repeater. She had pump action shotguns, or even her revolver would have been a better choice. A revolver is an objectively bad choice compared to a semi-automatic pistol. 17 bullets with a faster reload than 6 bullets with a cylinder. However, considering a high caliber revolver was used to take out Mitchell the first time, it would make sense she would be attached to it. That repeater part is exactly the thing that stuck out to me as well. She passes over the shotgun and specifically goes for the repeater to start clearing those rooms out. Like, damn lady, maybe grab something more suitable for closer ranges? I thought you'd been prepping for 30 years. Pirates of the Caribbean, where Elizabeth Swann is on the pirates trampoline thing. Gotta have the weird close up for 3D cinema audiences, so they go whoa and justify their double ticket price. I think it came out right before the trend of making everything 3D. I might be wrong, but I can't find anything saying that there was a 3D version of it. I liked most of the last GD, but Space Witch Leia flying frozen into an airlock looked awful in an otherwise beautifully shot movie. Honestly, as bad as that was, they probably executed it as good as they possibly could have. I can't remember where I heard this. I think it was the Film Horse podcast, but they were saying it was such a weird decision to show her flying out into space, cut away to action elsewhere, and then cut back to show her flying back in. It could have been much more impactful if they lingered on her in space and kept it as one continuous scene. Or the Harry Ginny scenes in, you guessed it, Harry Potter. Book Ginny, dynamic character who grows from starstruck little girl to a self-possessed young woman who overcame unimaginable trauma. Movie Ginny has red hair. Absolutely. Movie Ginny just lacks any personality. I like her book personality. She's strong, independent, rebellious, and has willpower. The babysitter giving her nude pictures to the kid at the end of Crazy, Stupid, Love? Yeah, that was freaking weird. Superman 1978. Superman takes Lois Lane for a flight around the city, and she starts doing an inner monologue that's a poem. I think she was supposed to sing it, but the actress can't actually sing. Awkward as frick. That scene was so bad, but holy crap, if she had sung those lines I feel like it would be infinitely worse. The entire casino subplot from the last GD. I like the idea of the casino planet from a world building perspective. It adds another unique location to the Star Wars universe. I think it might have worked better in Solo, cause that just seems like a place Han would have gone at some point. Remove the chase scene, and it would have been good enough. One of my favorite movie, the funniest ever done emo, is The Life of Brian by the Monty Python. There is that one scene with an UFO. I still don't know WTF it's there for. Love that scene, because it's freaking stupid and that's the point. Exactly, it's freaking hilarious. The scene in HP and the Deathly Hallows where Ron can open the Chamber of Secrets by speaking Parseltongue. All because Harry talks in his sleep. WTF JK Rowling. Really? It's been so long since I've read Harry Potter I can't remember if this was actually in the books or not. As far as I remember, no, that was not in the books. Okay, that scene in the Notebook, where they are at the beach and the girl starts flapping her arms like a moron saying she's a bird. I get embarrassed just watching it. The scene where she cheats on her fiancé. Or how about the scene where the guy says to go out with him, or he will jump off the Ferris wheel, and she agrees. People revel in that movie, being romantic and sweet, but it's really not. It's about two extremely immature and confused adults that hurt everyone around them because they are too wrapped up in their own little delusional fantasy. Good movie, obviously subjective, but I really enjoyed Rise of Skywalker, but felt like the kiss scene between the two main characters was very awkward and forced. Guy behind actually blurted out what the frick. No, I felt closer to that reaction myself. Just seemed weird that Rei would be into a dude who down to commit genocide until like 20 minutes before he comes to her rescue. Totally okay with him getting redemption and the whole life for a life kind of sacrifice, but that kiss was just so not needed and weird. Weirder was that the audience at my showing erupted into applause at that moment. Glad to know I'm not the only one who found it weird. The ending in I'm Legend. The alternate ending is way better. I don't really remember it, but I remember it being way better. The real ending was Will Smith working out the creatures were sentient and deciding to return the woman/creature he abducted to experiment on. In doing so he realizes that he was the real monster/legend. Instead we got the blow up dem evil zombies ending. I love The Last Unicorn, but the scene with the tree with tits trying to get it on with the magician is pretty goddamn mind-breaking. I always liked this scene, TBH. I saw it as that aunt that always hugs you when they see you, but has no idea that they can't wear that shirt at 60 anymore. Any scene Emma Frost was in for X-Men First Class. Don't you mean January Jones's breasts? Both of them? Mickey Rooney in Breakfast at Tiffany's. So wrong. My dad was watching something about him one morning, and that character came up. My dad said people are so crazy nowadays. I'll bet they think that was racist. You're so close, old man. So close. When Ginny Wheeleye ties Harry's shoes, anything with Ginny seemed forced, and they really lacked chemistry emo. Not so much bad as Unrealistic in The Deer Hunter, when the guys drove from the city Clairton, Pennsylvania to the Allegheny Mountains to go hunting. There aren't mountains that look like that within 2,000 miles of the city. Filming location was near Mount Baker in Wa. I wish we had mountains like that. Pennsylvania's highest elevation is 3,213 feet. Mount Davis. Mount Baker is 10,781 foot tall. We just have tall hills here in PA. Pennsylvania's beautiful, it's just a different type of beauty. It ended up being deleted and released later on Disney+, but the scene with Tony and his adult daughter from Avengers Endgame felt really awkward and out of place. Glad they didn't use it, to be fair. I didn't know about this scene. Is it just part of the Endgame on Disney+, or is it a deleted scene or something? I too would like to know about this deleted scene. The freaking scene at the end of The Dark Knight Rises when Talia drives the nuke off the road and down the lower street level. She has the worst death scene I've ever seen in any movie. All the while Commissioner Gordon hops out of the container with the nuke and is perfectly fine. Drives me nuts every time I watch that movie. What about the machine that vaporizes water in Begins, but somehow doesn't horrifically kill people? The sex scene with Joe Pesci and Sharon Stone in Casino. His sex scene in Home Alone is way better. Kevin. Quentin Tarantino trying to get his lines out talking to Jules in Pulp Fiction and they say Samuel used to stutter. Quentin Tarantino is often the worst thing about his movies. He's a pretty bad actor and his Australian accent in Django was just god awful. The riding the cheetah part of Harold and Kumar Go to White Castle. What kills me is how those two dudes who were robbed and beaten in Newark ended up at a hospital in Freehold. I don't like sand. It's rough and coarse and gets everywhere. That's an otherwise good movie. Harvey Dent's court scene in The Dark Knight. It's laughably trash and cheesy. Worst, it comes right after the beautiful heist opening scene. I always felt like that scene played the way it did because it's supposed to make you question whether what you've just witnessed was legitimate. It definitely feels staged. Didn't you find yourself wondering as you watched it if Dent, the guy we all knew would become Two-Face, was a con artist? That plays into one of the major themes of the movie Who Do You and Don't You Trust? One of the things that Dent is most angry about after Rachel's death and his near death is that it never would have happened if people, specifically Commissioner Gordon, had trusted him. Bruce spends the early part of the movie trying to figure out if he can trust Dent because he wants to walk away from being Batman and needs to know if Gotham is in trustworthy hands. At the end, the tech used to find and fight Joker is used, reluctantly, by Fox, who Batman trusts, and the trust is rewarded at the end when the tech is destroyed after being used, letting Fox know that it wouldn't be used again. Issues of trust show up again and again, and I've always felt that the early court scene happens the way it does to Cool and Slick precisely so that the audience doesn't trust Harvey Dent, even though he doesn't do anything wrong. The dialogue between Leia and Han in ROTJ, when she just randomly goes, "Hold me." Lucas really wrote romance based on dumb women from old western films or something lol. I never got the feeling that was supposed to be romantic. Leia just found out that Luke is her brother and that Darth Vader is their father and that Luke is going to meet him again, even though last time he lost a hand and nearly died. She probably thinks he's going to die this time and she's upset and wants a hug so she doesn't feel alone. In Juno, the weirdly intimate scene between Ellen Page and Jason Bateman. That was an important part of the movie, right? It showed her as being an innocent teen, despite what she may have thought about herself being jaded and him being a creepy old man. I had a similar moment as a teenager, a freshman in college, where I went to a party and thought that I was so cool and adult and got alone in a room with someone in his early 30s. He tried to kiss me. I had never been kissed, and I freaked out and ran away. It may have been a weird scene, but pretty in line with a coming of age experience. Yeah, I agree. It was awful but necessary. He needed to show what a creep he was, so he and Jennifer Garner could realize they needed to break up, and Juno could comfortably give her baby to someone not creepy who would love it.